Hi, welcome back. This is Pirates of Savannah audiobook, Chapter 14. I hope that last one wasn't too scary. Please enjoy, and remember, if you'd like to buy the one without commercials, go to lupoliink.com. Thank you.
Chapter 14. Swag and Jekyl Island. Isaac's pig shot blew the man's foot right off. William's shot finished off the man as it peppered his face. Archibald also blasted his musket to cover Isaac and William's retreat to reload. Leochi stood without fear as the bandits closed in on them. Colorful arrows flew through the swamp and into the marauder's chest. The pack mules were frightened by the musket shot and scattered into the swamps. The retreating men stopped in their tracks. Isaac began reloading his musket while William drew his large Scottish two-handed claymore. He still preferred the traditional two-handed style to the new basket-hilted version, which he considered too English for his liking.
Oh, go to hell, you fucking bastard!
The kilted man charged into the mix with a wild Scottish battle cry. Archibald followed suit and pulled his hunting blade as well. The battle-hardened Indian amazingly dropped two more thieves before the party was overrun. William lost all fear. He held his massive blade over his head and charged down a quivering road agent. The thief was paralyzed at the sight of the crazed man and froze. Archibald took advantage of the frightened, distracted man's mistake and pierced him below the ribs with his long blade. The bandit bent over and stumbled in pain. With his full momentum behind him, William dropped his blade on the thief's neck. The head flew off the body as a fountain of blood poured from the neck. The eyes on the head still blinked as it rolled across the ground. This gruesome display struck fear deep in the gang of road agents, and most of them reversed their charge. William and Archibald then turned on one unlucky thief in striking distance. They struck with deadly synchronicity, and it was impossible to block both blows. Archibald's blade sliced deep into the neck and the shoulder. The spray of the blood shot from the man, blinding the Scots, making them quickly wipe their eyes. The Indian used his bow to block a thief's blade. The old man avoided the repeated blows by dodging and weaving. The masked bandit screamed in pain as Garland sank her teeth into his buttocks. As the road agent raised his blade to kill the dog, a colorful war club struck him in the face. A loud cracking noise of a skull breaking echoed through the fight. The old man struck the masked man again, crushing his nose deep into his skull. The bandit dropped, making a loud gurgling sound. Garland then turned on the man's throat, spilling the rest of his life into the mud. Only 4 bandits were left, and they were running for their lives. The Indian switched back to his bow and pierced 2 more men in the back. William finished the dying man off on the ground with his blade. Isaac ran back to the line and finally joined the fight, ready to fire again. The old Indian cussed loudly and creaked and kicked the dead masked man on the ground. Archibald panted.
Don't worry. I don't think those 2 will come back. Not worried. Masked man's blade chipped favorite bow.
He shouted and kicked the dead man again. The group was still at a high sense of alert and a ready state of battle. Legochi covered the men as they were scavenging the dead like vultures. No guns, just blades and a little silver. They stripped anything worth any value and left the dead bodies for the alligators.
I'm surprised they followed us this deep into the swamps, Isaac stated. Oy vey. I'm getting really sick of these bandits. They didn't even wait to try to kill us while we slept. They grow bolder and bolder, and attack us while the sun is high. If we push fast, we can camp at the mounds by nightfall, Archibald reasoned. Show respect, white man. We sleep outside of sacred burial ground or anger their spirits. No man sleeps near mounds. I am not ready to see Great Spirit Horse yet,
the superstitious Indian demanded.
You are in charge, Great Chief. We'll do anything you ask.
Archibald flattered.
We need find mules. They run off from musket noise.
The Indian commanded.
Just follow the tracks, lads,
Archibald added.
Let's get those mules back.
The old man relaxed and nodded in approval. The party of blood-soaked men quickly moved deeper into the swamp. Within an hour, the mules were tracked down, and they were back on their way to the mounds. Patrick did not leave the arms of the naked woman for 2 days. He ran his fingers on her skin, tracing every tattoo. The two only stopped having sex to occasionally sleep, eat, and to use the chamber bucket. For the first time in his life, he experienced euphoria. Nothing else mattered in life but the present moment. April slowly woke and mumbled, "I best be getting topside and make sure the crew has not sailed us to the Caribbean by now. You can go after one more time. I want to try you in that dog style again." Patrick pounced on the tattooed woman, and there was a knock at the door. A muffled voice called through the door.
Captain, I knows I'm not supposed to disturb you, but you best be coming topside to see this.
"Very good, crewman," April growled. "I'll be up shortly." The two naked lovers had a hard time finding all their garments. They were cast off all over the chamber. When the clothes were collected, they dressed as fast as they could, but one of April's boots could not be found. After 5 minutes of searching, the missing boot finally appeared. Both suited up into full war gear and headed deckside. The sun was setting, and a storm was moving off in the distance. Low booms could be heard carrying across the water. "What's that sound? Is that thunder coming from a storm?" Patrick inquired. "That be cannon fire, me wolf," April answered dryly. She then ordered a crewman to fetch her spyglass to take a look. A black-skinned, exotic sailor handed her spyglass, and April immediately started to climb the rigging. Patrick followed and ascended the mast as well. April had a top-of-the-line folding spyglass, and it had excellent range. Her vision reached out across the distance to see a galleon firing upon a small ketch. She saw a British St. George Jack on the galleon and a French Jack on the ketch. Within minutes, the fight was over and the small ketch was overtaken. So the Madam Captain ordered the men to fly the British Jack so as to avoid the same fate. The crew opened a secret bottom in the rum barrel and pulled the matching jack out of their collection of flags. She ordered them to set sail and move closer to the fight. It did not take long, and the ketch was now flying a British Jack. The two ships sailed away quickly as to avoid the incoming storm clouds. She watched until the two ships drifted away further, then barked her orders. "Full sails! Set the course to the battle waters! Hurry! We must beat the storm. It looks like they lost some barrels. Let's go see what they be dropping." The crew efficiently carried out her orders and caught the wind just right. They closed the distance in short time and went in to examine the area. The wind had picked up and the storm was rolling in as they arrived on the site of the battle. But Captain Sky was careful enough to leave Captain K.T. Brewer's ship in eyesight. 5 barrels were rolling in the waves, but they were taking on water and sinking. A number of dead bodies were bobbing up and down in the ocean. "Help! Help!" was heard over the growing storm. "Look! Man overboard!" Patrick pointed out a man clinging to a sinking barrel. "Bring the Mary Read about, boys, and pick him up," she ordered. The ship swung around, and they threw a rope to the splashing man. The crew quickly hoisted him out of the drink. "Merci, Captain," the soaked man said to Patrick. "Oh, that's your first mistake," Patrick cringed. "I be the fucking captain of this barkie. Throw him back in the blue until he learns to show some respect," the true captain commented. The 4 crewmen threw the confused, soaked man back into the windy ocean. The poor man was floundering in the choppy water, trying to stay afloat. "Christ, throw him a rope again," she ordered. The waterlogged man grabbed the rope and pulled aboard. He coughed up a lungful of water. Then the rescued sailor begged in a French accent. Pardon, madame. I have never seen a lady captain. No disrespect intended, mon ami. What the hell happened, sailor? She questioned. We were overrun by British privateers. I was blown overboard with the barrels by the cannon fire. The British killed my crew and threw me into the water. I acted dead and let myself bob with the barrels. Thank Saint Michael, you saved me. I would have drowned for certain in this storm. Tell me, what was in those barrels floating out there? She inquired. We were shipping salt. The cargo is ruined, madame, as soon as the water breached them, the Frenchman explained. Crew, get us away from this storm. Find me a port. And pull that fucking British jack down. I may need it to wipe my arse, she yelled. The Frenchman laughed. Oh, thanks, Saint Michael again. You are not the damn British. I would like you to save me some of that jack to wipe my ass with as well, madame. Find this wholesome rum, the pirate captain demanded. Let's have a drink and hear your story. You'll be safe here now. We don't have time to go traipsing through all the damn gator-filled marshes just to avoid them. Plus, our luck won't hold out that much if we fight them. Those Spanish troops in our path won't be as easy to slay as those bandits were. We need to find another way through them without bloodshed, the Scotsman warned.
Well, great warrior, how would your war parties handle something like this?
Archibald asked. The white-haired man smiled and his wrinkles deepened. Him and his collie dog, Garland, ran into the swamp and disappeared. After 20 minutes, they reappeared with a handful of white flowers. The Indians started collecting the seeds and then carefully cutting up and preparing the roots. Archibald started laughing.
Oh, my God, are you going to give them all that devil's trumpet? They will go stark mad for 2 weeks. I all. I had to use that plant when I ran out of laudanum during amputations. It did not go well. You might kill those men giving them this much Jamestown weed, Isaac warned.
As usual, I'm the only person in this group that has no idea what the hell this plant is, Patrick complained. Archibald shook his head.
You really don't know much about the world you live in now, lad. Back in 1676, during Bacon's rebellion in Jamestown, Virginia, Bacon's men slipped a bunch of British soldiers some of their plant's leaves and seeds in their salads. That group of English soldiers went mad for 11 days, and they had to be quarantined because most went completely out of their minds. They went blind, forgot to eat, or could not stop laughing. Most of them were naked and shitting themselves to death. After such a horrible reaction, the plant got the nickname Jamestown weed.
The old man announced that the weed was properly prepared and he was ready. When he scouted earlier, he saw the Spanish soldiers had a small pot of stew brewing. The group watched with admiration as the old warrior slowly crept into the camp in broad daylight. The soldiers were too distracted playing dice to notice the white-haired man drop something into their stew. He vanished back into the swamp, as quiet as a cougar. It took them almost 2 hours before the Spanishmen sat down and ate their stew. The entire group ate as they laughed about their dice game. It only took about a half hour before they started acting strangely. A few men started dropping and clenching their bellies in pain, while the others just suddenly became amazed how interesting their own hands were. They stared at their digits, opening and closing them with fascination. When a few of the soldiers got naked and started to jump back and forth over the fire pit, Ligo Chief figured it was time to go circle around the camp. They were almost spotted sneaking past because William could not stop giggling at the humorous sight of the touched men with madness. The group picked up their pace and made it to the mounds without another incident. The men heard Garland growling and stopped the work of removing the massive pile of stones. The men approached the canine cautiously with their weapons drawn. The collie was growling loudly at a large bush that was shaking. The men crept closer to investigate. The dog yelped as a large open mouth and rows of teeth stormed out of the foliage. Garland jumped sideways and barely missed the pair of snapping jaws. Isaac showed unusual courage by charging the beast. He unloaded the musket full of pig shot into the reptile's side. It bucked with pain and swung its tail, knocking the hulking man off his feet. It moved in to finish off Isaac when a colorful arrow appeared in the massive gator's side. The scaly beast slowed its approach as another arrow plucked in its side. Garland taunted the gator fearlessly and returned its attention to the yapping dog. Its gaping open mouth opened again and then mysteriously stopped moving. It just laid there, with the mouth wide open. The gator's tail was slapping wildly, and its body rolled over and over in the mud. Isaac wearily got to his feet, and he had noticed that his head was no longer attached to the flailing alligator's body. The group watched in amazement as the body kept spinning for another half-minute. William walked over with his bloody claymore sword, holding the gator head aloft, triumphantly stating, "I'm mounting this on me wool. None of me clansmen will ever believe I took the head off this beast." As the group inspected the body, they noticed it was riddled with shot, 3 broken shafts, and several stab wounds.
"That's one fucking tough beast,"
Archibald concluded.
"You finish stones. I skin gator,"
the old Indian man offered. The men went back to work as their guide skinned the reptile. The Indian wasted very little as he carved every little usable piece of meat out of the carcass. He even cut the legs off to sell the claws to some of the tribesmen for rituals. All the meat was loaded into a large bag, and he hung the hide to dry. The men finished moving the stones and went into the sacred cave to inspect. The cannons looked like they did when they left them, with no rust or browning. They were well preserved considering they were stored in a damp swamp cave. It took almost a day to pull the cannons out and to attach their battle carriages to the uncooperative mules. By sundown, everything was loaded in the mule train. There was 8 12-pound cannons, 8 artillery and storage carts, and 18 mules. The Indian thought to bring 2 more as pack mules, or in case any of them died during the journey. After readying the mule team, the group spent the rest of the evening piling the rocks back and hiding the entrance to the cave. Ligo Chi insisted they hurry and leave before dark. He was worried that the white men would anger his ancestors' spirits. The group obliged and finished their work as fast as they could. They were also afraid of being cursed by revengeful Indian spirits. The men pulled the train in the dark for about an hour and then set up camp. Archibald worried as they were already behind schedule. Isaac kept disappearing and coming back with bundles and bundles of wood, more than was needed for a fire. The group gorged themselves on gator meat until they could barely move. Even Garland was passed out by the fire with a fat, happy belly. Legochi pulled up his pipe, lit some hemp, and the men recounted their heroic battle with the green-scaled monster. Unbelievably, they became hungry again after they smoked so much, and helped themselves to another course of gator meat. The old man stayed up most of the night, curing the hide over the fire and smoking the rest of the meat so that it would not spoil during their journey. The party was woken by pouring rain. It had come down so thick and hard it stung the skin. The swamp was flooding with water, and quickly they had to move this muddy train to higher ground. The train slowed as the carts and cannons kept getting stuck in the mud. Thankfully, Isaac's massive strength was enough to free the wheels and keep the train moving. To slow the pace even further, the booming thunder and lightning was spooking the mules. The storm was so loud that it even scared their fearless dog Garland. After one incredible crack of thunder, the dog jumped into the cart and hid under one of the canopies. The men trudged through the mud like this for 2 long days. They fought hordes of flesh-hungry mosquitoes, venomous snakes, and gigantic alligators, and were now even being robbed of their food stores by a bunch of raccoons at night. On top of worry about the beast of the swamp, the men had to stay constantly vigilant for bandits as well as the Spanish and British soldiers. Being seen by anyone would be trouble, so the old scout took the men through the deepest and least traveled parts of the swamp. That also meant that it was the most difficult area to travel through, making the entire trip absolutely miserable for man and beast. The exhausted and soaked men had taken shifts while they set camp. They had scared off a bobcat, and the old man swore he had even heard a cougar cry the night before. Lugoci suspected that the mules were being hunted by pack wolves. The trickster, thieving raccoons, had brought the attention of a pack of gray wolves. Since there had been so much hunting of the wolves and their prey, the canines were growing increasingly bold in their search for food. When the sun set, Archibald could hear wolves growling just outside the light of the campfire. Luckily, William came up with the brilliant idea of storing dry wood down the barrels of the cannons. If the Scot had not taken this precaution before leaving the mounds, there would have been no hope of starting a fire in all the rain. The men would have shivered and caught ill with no heat, and it had the added benefit of keeping the wolves at bay. Surprisingly, the mules had not fallen ill. They were much tougher animals than Archibald anticipated. The sound echoed over the rain, making the men spring to life with weapon in hand. Isaac yelled,
That wolf was getting too close to the mules. I don't think I can hit it, but the shot scared them off. I heard them running away in the dark.
The men then decided to pull the mules closer to the camp and to surround the pack animals with torchlight. It was a necessary precaution, but William was sure there would be no chance of sleep now. In just 20 minutes, the sounds of hungry wolves could be heard just outside the torch perimeter. Over 10 sets of wolf eyes reflected red in the lightning.
Lads, there'd be a lot more wolves than I reckoned,
Archibald said in a panic.
We need a plan.
The lightning flashed, again revealing that Archibald had greatly underestimated the amount of wolves circling the camp. Now close to 20 sets of hungry eyes could be seen reflecting back.
Get the mules ready to move out. We can't stay here, lads,
Archibald announced. Are you touched in the mind, lad? We can't be traipsing in the swamp in this black, William protested. It would be impossible, lad. The blacksmith fired back.
I can count almost 20 wolves out there. We can't be staying here.
William reluctantly lined up the mules to move. Lugoci took the lead and started to march the train into the forbidding blackness. Isaac appeared, holding a large sack of gator meat legs. With amazing strength, he threw the offering deep into the darkness to the pack of predators, hoping to distract them long enough to make an escape. The plan seemed to work. The pack was growling and fighting each other over the alligator parts as the train quietly moved away.
Good thinking using gator, lad,
Archibald complimented.
I hate to give away our prize of that tasty meat, but if we lose the mules, we'll be dragging these cannons through the muck ourselves.
The group did not get very far in the complete blackness of night. The storm had blocked out any starlight, and it was pitch black. They had no choice but to use the last of the dry wood to set a new camp. They circled the mules and then surrounded them with torches. Sadly, this used up the last of their dry wood. The men were going to need immense luck if they would ever make it to Jekyll Island on time. The tattooed woman swigged down a mug of rum and asked, "What do people call you, Frenchman?" "Madame, my name is Robert Doe. My family line is Parisian, from the countryside of France. I'm a trader merchant who ships spices around the world. I really hate working around the colonies, and much prefer travel to the Orient." "Was that your ship and cargo the British stole?" she asked as Regan the cat jumped onto her lap. He replied, "The cargo, oui. The ship, no. I rent ships to carry my cargo. I never made enough to buy my own ship. So you are skilled at bargaining in languages, are you? I could use a man of your talents, if you need a job. The captain questioned as she stroked her purring feline. Since all my money just was stolen and you hate the English as much as me, I would have to say oui, depending on the terms. The Frenchman nodded and reached out, also to pet Reagan. The cat immediately hissed at Robert and swatted his hand. Crimson dots appeared on the French trader's palm. She's a little particular in who she fancies. Feed her some fish for a few days and try again. I can pay you 5 shillings a week and half the profit of any tradings you procure. You will have access to this ketch and can take her as far as you need to along the coast in the Caribbean. You will have access to my very loyal crew to assist you in any deal you broker. She offered. She spit in her hand and held it out. The Frenchman looked a little repulsed by this custom, but spit in his palm and shook. With use of this ship and a good crew, we could make much silver, mon ami. Let us seal the merger in rum and song. Sing me a French sailing song. I be hankering for some entertainment, she demanded. The Frenchman cleared his throat and started to belt out an old sea shanty. April sat on Patrick's lap, and he held her as the man sang for their amusement. 10 minutes of song put the woman in a romantic mood, and she whispered something into Patrick's ear. The Madam Captain thanked the Frenchman for his song, and then ordered her crew, "See that Mr. Doe is properly fed, and give him as much rum as he cares to have. Keep a careful eye peeled for that English galleon, and be sure to keep Captain Brewer's vessel in sight." The captain then placed the cat in Robert's lap, and it began to hiss. She laughed as she took the smiling, lovesick Patrick down to her captain's quarters. The next morning there was a knock on the captain's door, and the crewman reported,
Captain, we are at the location, but the land party has not yet arrived.
"Very good, crewman. Report when we arrive."
Quit it, stop it.
She giggled while Patrick tickled her breast. She then mounted Patrick and said, "You know, we have much more in common than you know." "Really? Do those tattoos also give you magical powers to read minds?" Patrick smiled. "Shake my hand, Mr. Wolf." She extended her hand. Patrick was confused by this, but took her inked-up hand into his and gave her a firm handshake. "Not like that. I mean shake my hand, Patrick," she hinted. She slid her hand down his elbow and locked wrist. She extended her 2 fingers into a V pattern. Patrick returned the secret handshake. "How do you know about that? Only men are allowed into that club," Patrick asked, puzzled. "If you happen to notice, I do as I please. I do anything men do. I run my own business, captain my own ship, and fuck who I please. Because of my pirating days, people still fear me and the connections I have. I get to do things other women can't even dream about doing. I'm also the only woman allowed into a meeting of the Freeman Society," she explained. "I do many clandestine missions to help the cause. I am one of the few people that you will ever meet who actually knows what it is to live free. Being a captain on the open waters is the only time when a person can live without anyone else controlling your life. You are free to earn a living as you please, not pay taxes to some unseen master, and live by your own rules. It is a life I really miss. I value that freedom over anything else, and I'm trying to find a way to return to it. The Mary Read is a fine ship, but she is too small for living free on the open seas." "Is pirating the reason you changed your name?" he dared to ask her. "Any more questions like that, my wolf, and you won't be invited into my chamber for the rest of the voyage," the madam warned. "That question is respectfully withdrawn," he said as he rolled her naked body over. It had been 3 passionate and lustful days since the couple were seen. The naked lovers woke to a noisy, scurrying topside.
Come on, just put your backs in.
Get dressed quickly. Something is afoot, the naked woman barked. The two dressed in a hurry and armed up. They ran topside, and their eyes recoiled from the sunlight. The crew of the Mary Read looked down the coast and saw a massive man frantically waving his arms, jumping up and down. "Let's move it, crew. They need help. Man the sails." The captain turned to Patrick. "Do you think it is your friends? They're at least 2 days overdue, and it is broad daylight." Using your spyglass to confirm it was indeed his friends, he spotted Isaac waving his arms on the beach and his clothes covered with blood. Yes, that's Isaac, but they look like they're in real trouble. The Black Hound and the Mary Read quickly made it up the coastline toward the jumping men. "Isaac, are you in trouble?" Patrick shouted over the water.
Thank Moses, you're still here. I knew you would not leave us, even if Archibald told you to. We have a large group of Spanish soldiers about 3 hours behind us. We have to load these cannons right away."
Isaac yelled. The cannon train then quickly came into view, and the crew scrambled to get the thick gangplanks ready. Patrick yelled to his friend, "Isaac, these ships have a very shallow draft. Take these lines and tie them to those trees over there. Help us steady the ship, and we'll pull her real close." In minutes, both the ships were docked against a small cliff. A door on the railing opened, and the crew slid the heavy, reinforced gangplank to the top of the little cliff. It was almost perfect. The gangplanks were practically level. The exotic crew poured onto the cliffs to help the exhausted delivery men. They rolled the cannons down the gangplanks and right onto the decks of the small ships. Room was quickly becoming scarce on the deck, so the cannons were tied to a rope going over the yardarm. The line was tied to an anchor pulley, and it was lowered into the cargo hold. The crew and the exhausted travelers worked in a panicked frenzy to load everything as fast as possible. Captain K.T. Brewer shouted, "Take the carts, too. Stack 'em on the cannons if you have to." 2.5 hours passed when April shouted to the crew they were ready to cast off. Ligochi was visibly upset. Archibald asked him to join the ship, but he stated, "I need mules, worth good money to my tribe. I try and escape with them." Patrick overheard this and turned to April. "Please, there is no way this warrior is going to slip past any army looking for him with 18 mules. He won't leave them behind. Can't you just cram them on the deck for a day and then drop them off? This Indian has saved our lives over and over. We owe it to him." She engaged in deep thought and said, "My wolf, you are now indebted to me for this. One day, I will need a favor, and you will return the call." Much to the crew's dismay, 9 stinky, flea-ridden mules were loaded down the gangplank on each ship. Mr. Doe had untied the lines to the Mary Read and rushed down the gangplank before the ship pulled away from the cliff. The crew barely had time to pull in the plank and shut the rail door before Spanish voices could be heard coming near the cliffs. Somehow, everyone and all the cargo had made it aboard the 2 vessels. It was nearly impossible to maneuver the rigging and the sails around a collection of mules in the way, and the tiny ships creaked in protest of all the weight, but they finally turned out into the inlet. The 2 vessels caught wind and pulled away from the coast just as the Spanish soldiers arrived and started firing their muskets at the 2 ketches. The sailors returned fire, but both war parties were too far out of range to hit anything. The sails finally filled with wind, and they pulled away quickly from the coast out to deeper waters. The entire crew cheered and congratulated themselves for pulling off such an impossible feat. The weary delivery men sighed with relief and exhaustion. They were given mugs of rum to toast their amazing journey. Captain Skye came forward and toasted. "Let you recount your tale over some rum." Archibald smiled.
I'd be happy to tell you my story, but first, let's talk gold.